Hello class, for your first exercise this week, I want you to draw an egg at life-size scale on a piece of the white homework paper. A white egg is the best subject for this, but a brown egg will do. And if you can't get an egg, I've uploaded a photo of an egg in the right light situation for you to draw from the digital image. You need to light your egg very specifically. You can see how close my lamp is to it. The closer your light source, the deeper the shadows are going to be. And I want you to try to create some dark shadows on the egg. I want you to try to create a light situation on this egg where it's pretty much half in light and half in shadow. And I'm just going to point out something to you to try to replicate with your light situation. I want you to try to achieve some reflected light on your egg. So I want you to place the egg on a white surface, like I have this plate here. Mine is taped so it doesn't roll around, but you can see that the darkest part of this egg is not what's furthest from the light source. And that's because some of the ambient light from the plate is bouncing up and reflecting back. And it's what we call reflected light. So I want you to try to create a light situation where you've got half light, half shadow with reflected light visible on it. You should also be drawing the cast shadow that the egg makes on your surface. So I'm going to be demonstrating today how I would go about doing this, and I'm going to be using all the materials probably for this exercise. And the first thing that I want to show you how to do is to get your initial line work in and also to do a little bit of measuring. So the most important thing I can tell you guys now, and the main point of this exercise, is for you to begin to avoid using contour line. Contour line is what I would describe as outlining this egg. So the first thing I did is just draw a hard outline. That's a contour line. So the point of this exercise is for you to try to draw as closely to match what you're seeing. And what I'm seeing is not outlined. And so you're going to be focusing on value, light and dark, and hard edges and soft blending of the material. So you can see that it's a really sharp edge to the outside of the egg, and it's really soft the way that the light transitions to dark. So you'll want to begin practicing those two skills. So I'm going to use my pencil to get my line work in. I could have also used the soft charcoal, but I want to show you how to use light pressure with pencil. The biggest mistake my drawing students do is they just will do the initial line work really hard, and you'll actually never be able to erase those lines out. So I'm using as delicate pressure as I can to start getting my initial line work in for the egg. And my pencil never touches my paper unless I've noticed something about what I'm drawing. So right now I'm trying to match the curvature of the egg and kind of eyeball the size of it. And your pencil should never touch, your drawing material should never touch your paper unless you've noticed something about your subject that you want to record on the paper. So right now I'm trying to record the angles of it. And I'm going to show you your first measuring tip for drawing from life, which is to close one eye, and you can actually trace in the tip of your drawing utensil to the edge of your subject. And right now I'm pretending as if I'm drawing on the actual right edge of the egg so that my hand can get a feel for what that angle is, and the muscle memory will remember when I put my hand down on the page to record it. And so don't try to do too much. I was just pretending to trace just this part here. Now I'll go to the other side, close one eye, and just sort of eyeball the curve. The angle of the camera on my computer is looking at a slightly different angle than my eyes are. So just want to point that out as well. So I've used as light pressure as I possibly can. So I should be able to erase these lines. I want you to start practicing doing that. I'm also going to, even lighter, do my best guess as to the contour, the shape of the shadow. And the shadow edge, the cast shadow edge, is so diffuse that I want to be very careful not to give it a hard outline, because that should be very gentle later. So one thing I also want you guys to make sure you're not doing is, I oftentimes see my drawing students drawing just the same line over and over and over again. Make sure that if you're going to make adjustments, that they're actually making meaningful changes. And if they're not, maybe the drawing is okay. All right, so now I'm pretty happy with this initial line work. One thing that I'm going to check here, because an egg is not a perfect sphere, and so it's actually wider on the right than it is on the left, so I'm going to check that. and it looks like that matches in the drawing. One of your measuring tips that's really useful is to close one eye again and pretend that you're actually pinching your subject. So it's sort of like if you're taking a photo, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and the camera is oriented in a way that you pretend that you're actually holding it up. It's like that. You close one eye and imagine that your fingers are pinching the egg. And you can do this with me now. Let's just take a basic height to width measurement. So you should close one eye, lock your elbow so that the distance is consistent, and then pretend as if you're pinching the height of the egg. Now keep that distance between your fingers consistent and just turn it. And so when you do that, you can make a measurement, how much wider is the egg than it is tall. And when I do this, it looks like the egg is 1/3 wider than it is tall. So then I can do the same thing and pinch and check with my drawing, and it's pretty consistent. So I'm confident that my best guess was right. I'm also going to check now what the highest point and lowest point of my egg is, because I just want to check if it's in the right place as my drawing. So when I'm looking at it, the highest point's over here. And so I'm going to make sure it's the highest point on my drawing. And then the lowest point's actually over here. And so I can tell this is off. So I need to bring this contour down just a little bit to more accurately match what I'm seeing. Okay, so now I'm going to jump to the charcoal, the soft charcoal, to begin shading. And so I'm going to start with my darkest areas. And for this exercise, I really want you to be matching values. And remember, your drawing utensils should never touch the page unless you're noticing something. So right now, I'm filling in where the cast shadow is. And then I'm also going to place some of this soft charcoal around this band where the darkest shadow is on the egg. And always be willing to adjust your contours as well. Don't be complacent that your initial line work is accurate. You should always be questioning it. So now I'm going to use my finger to do a little bit of blending. And the soft charcoal, a lot of it really comes off as you work it into the tooth, and it's lightening to the proper lightness. And I'm bringing the soft charcoal out to the edge to erase the little graphite line that I had. And then I made a mental note that that spread the shadow out a little too far. So I'm going to go in with my eraser. You can see I've ripped my eraser up. If you cut it with a scissor, you can regain a nice, clean, sharp edge to do precise erasing. And I'm just going to kind of gently swipe at this to ease the edge back a bit because I know that it expanded. And I can do the same thing when I was measuring the egg. Where's the lowest point of my shadow? It's over down here. So I can, that shows me that my shadow is actually off a little bit. And I'm also checking where is it darkest in this cast shadow? And it's darkest over here. And it actually gets a little lighter over here and a little lighter over here. So I'll use my clean finger to wipe off a little bit of the material there. All right, now I'm going to use my finger to blend, and I'm being very careful not to hit the edge. You want to be careful not to disrupt the material too far. You can always erase back, but I like working tidier if I can. So now I'm going to be pulling up, and I'm actually smearing the material in the shape of the egg. So I'm curving the stroke basically. And you can do this when you're applying material, but also when you're blending. And it helps support the three-dimensional form that you're drawing when you do that. So I'm wiping my finger off with this paper towel, and I'm going to bring some of that drawing material down. And so now that I've blended out that material I put, I'm going to check my subject. Mental note, this is supposed to be the reflected light. This is the highlight, the bright where the light is hitting. So right now, this is the lightest part of my drawing. So that needs to darken relative to that. I need to make sure that this is the lightest point of my egg. Okay, so bring down bit more material. So I'm making a mental note that my contour, the edge of this is real sloppy. One thing that you guys want to be avoiding is what I describe as fuzzy edges. So it's a balancing act between getting your object to have a crisp, sharp edge, but also to not be relying on contour line. It's a balancing act. And so here I'm going to add a little bit more material. And what I'm doing is I'm carefully blending and I'm not letting my finger touch the edge because I want that to be crisp. So in order to get this a little sharper, I'm just going to spend some time looking at my subject. I can actually see their shadow creeping up the bottom of the egg. So I'm going to use that to help define it. I can also see that there's what we call the occlusion shadow right here that I'm drawing, where the darkest part of the cast shadow falls closest to the surface of the object. And so now it's a little less wonky over there, sharper. And so I have to make a decision here because right now, to describe the edge, the top of my egg, I'm using just a line to tell you that this is where the egg ends, but that's not what's happening when I'm looking at the egg. At the top of my egg is just darker than what's behind it. So I am going to bring a little bit of material just to allow the value to accomplish the difference. And once I did that, I looked over at my egg and realized that the highlight is up at the top, but the brightest point is actually a little glimmer here. And so I'm actually going to use my white material to try to get that. And the white material, the white drawing material shows up better on the newsprint because the newsprint is much darker than it. So this white paper is already so bright that it's not a good choice. And so you actually couldn't see it at all. So I'm just going to use my eraser then. And so I'm gonna just take a nice clean point, my eraser, and I'm gonna check where the brightest point is on the egg. Go here. And while I have an eraser, I'm just noticing that the lightest point in the reflected light's over on the far right. And so I'm gonna try to use that. I'm also gonna use the eraser to try to carefully carve out an edge. This is a way to create an edge without using line. So you can see I've gone too far. There's a term I use in art called pushing and pulling. Oftentimes you'll bring a contour out, it's a little too far and you have to push it back in. And then maybe you'll go a little too far again and you push it back out. To me, there's just a lot of pushing and pulling when you're making adjustments for a drawing. So now I'm checking in with my subject. And the thing that's popping out is now this is the lightest point of the drawing again, which is not good. And so I need to bring more material down. And then I've lost this edge again. So I'm going to use my eraser to try to get it back. Using the eraser to carve out a nice hard edge is one of the best ways to do it. And so you can see now, I'm going to use my finger to blend it. I'm not going to touch this line because it's nice and crisp. So I'm just going to carefully bring the material down without hitting it. So this is starting to look pretty close to what I'm looking at. I just made a mental note. My shadows in my drawing are not dark enough. So I want to just add a little bit more drawing material. So I'm going to bring this out a little bit too far so I can erase it back. I'm going to close one eye, trace the contour in the air before I touch down on the paper at the top left edge, just to make sure. Oops, a little too far. Oops. As long as you're working with light enough pressure, you should be able to erase all your mistakes. So you're welcome to use the compressed charcoal. My light situation doesn't really require it. The soft charcoal seems to be going perfectly fine. So here right now, I created another fuzzy edge. So I'm going to get my eraser and really carefully, while looking at the contour of the actual egg, fix it. Never take anything for granted that, you know, contour is correct or that a value is correct. You want to always be asking, how is my drawing different than my subject, and how can I change it to make it closer to what I'm looking at? So it's really important that you guys are only touching the page when you're confident that you've noticed something that needs to change. A lot of my students in the classroom, I'll catch them just staring at their drawing and not even looking at their subject. So make sure you're not doing that. So I think that's a good place to stop. If I were to continue working on this, I would soften hard moments like this. I would try to get an even crisper edge, darken this shadow a little bit more, but I think that'll get you started. Just do your best.